Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of art. It's the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson, coming to you from the 40 West Arts District in Lakewood, Colorado. And joining me from his bunker to art in Rapid City, South Dakota, he puts the co in host. My partner, you know him as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, Wes Brown.
Hey, Todd. Oh my God, it's another week. And yes, I do put the co in host, co-host. Anyway, hey, I just got back from a 2.5 mile walk and I didn't die. So things are looking good.
Well, that's good because I would have to fly solo and that would be disappointing.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that. If things went south on the walk, you know, and I didn't make it back in time, you would just have to fly solo and we have bigger issues to worry about than whether I'm on the podcast or not.
Right. Then our guest this week becomes my co-host.
Right. The co with the host. I mean, the most.
The co with the most. Well, good. I'm glad you had. Was it lovely? Is it a nice day?
It was beautiful.
In Rapid
It was
City?
like 66 degrees and no breeze and just a lovely walk in the neighborhood. And I took the flats. I didn't want to push it and take the hills. So, you know, it was pretty good. And we did like, Tonette went with me and we did like average of 19-minute miles. So, you know, yeah, nice. It was good.
I like a good walk.
Yeah. Especially in the morning. I don't like too early, like 6 o'clock in the walk. No, I'm not. I got to be awake, have a cup of coffee, couple cups of coffee. I think that's how. So
I think you need more.
Yeah. Evidently the walk didn't help my language skills at all. So
the synapses are still not quite firing,
yeah.
But the rest of your body is ready to rock and roll.
Rolling. You bet.
Yeah. So you ready to talk some art, Wes Brown?
I am. Hey, I just want to give a big shout out to my cousin, Jess Brown, who I spent the weekend with last weekend. We had some good times. We had my mom's memorial and they drove up from Kansas. He's a big fan. So we talked about a couple different episodes and people we've talked to. So, you know, shout out to Jess. Thanks for being a loyal listener and a fantastic cousin.
Right on. You know what? I was just thinking about that the other day as well. And I know our good buddy down in the land of Oz continues to listen to us. So a shout out to Leith O'Malley.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I always see Australia pop up on our metrics. And so I always like to mention him every now and again. We'll have to talk to Leith again sometime in the near future.
He's a hoot. I love that man.
Yep.
And he's still doing some great stuff, isn't he? I see him on Instagram just pumping out some good art. So
always.
Love his stuff.
Always.
Yep.
And everybody else that continues to listen to us, thank you so much for tuning in and checking out the podcast. We really appreciate it. Remember, you can always find out what we're up to via our social media on Instagram at Tenant Podcast, our Tenant Podcast Facebook page, and of course, our website, tenantpodcast.com. All right, so your muscles are all ready to go.
I'm all limber.
Synapses are semi-firing.
They are semi-firing.
You got your eyeballs all lubed up.
As lubed as they can be.
Ear holes are functioning properly.
They're clear and ready for takeoff.
Excellent. All right. We're over the moon to talk with this week's guest. Her work is absolutely stunning. You can check it out via her website, ravenrohrig.com. That's ROHRIG. And you can follow her on Instagram at Raven Rohrig. Raven, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. I'm so glad to be here.
It's great having you here. I'm just over the moon about this. So thanks for sitting down with us on a beautiful Saturday morning. So
I'm excited too. I'm glad to see your faces and hear your voices talking to me now instead of on your podcast.
I became familiar with your work this past winter in January. I think it was January when Bill had his annual no-show at Bitfactory. And I just found your work to be not only exquisite, but fresh and compelling and inspired. I want you to take a moment and talk about what kind of work you do and the thought behind it for our listeners.
I would say the kind of work I do is really about exploring myself, my journey through being an empath and someone who's deeply thoughtful and And when I present it to people, what I have found is a connection that they don't know most of the time what the work is about, but they have a very similar experience where it becomes an emotional experience for them, or just a really compelling, I can see that they're very, very drawn to it in a way that isn't just pretty art, but they're feeling something in it. So, like, just down to the bottom of why I make, it is a processing thing for me, processing my emotions and my experiences. And people find their own stories in my work. And I have found that to be greatly rewarding. Not something I expected either.
I definitely feel that. Everyone we have on this podcast, we love. That's why they're on here. But I will say, when I first experienced your work, it was, like I said, it was so fresh and inspiring that I knew from the get-go that we had to have you on at some point. It gave me a jolt when I first experienced it. And I got very excited about what I was seeing because it was very unique and different from anything else that I'd ever seen before. And that's what always gets me jazzed when I see somebody that's producing something that's completely, different than the other stuff that I see out there all the time.
I get that comment a lot, that it's work that they've never seen before. And one, it's a completely humbling thing to hear that. There's so many amazing artists, and humans have been making art for the entirety of our existence. So, not to say that there's anyone that I'm wholly unique, but I do get that feedback a lot and feel humbled by it and a little shy about it because I can't understand how it would be. And actually, I don't know. My experience with art through my life is, I think, a really odd experience for an artist. And I think that's what fed into why this art may be coming out as more fresh, because I haven't seen a lot of art in my life. And I spend, most of my time and experience with art is actually with my own art. For a long time, I felt like that was the wrong way to do it, and getting into art spaces now with people who are highly educated around art. But I look at it now and I think, wow, that might have been the best choice I had, coming into my middle of life, thinking I had failed so much by not educating myself on what is out there and what people are creating. And it turned out to be probably really smart for me creating something that's solely from my heart. Of course, we all have influences no matter what you do. I don't live in a bubble, but the work is really coming from my heart, and my influences tend to be my own wanderings and creativity. And I do draw my inspiration from non-art spaces too. But I really thank you for that comment, and it's really wonderful to hear, humbling, and makes me kind of shy, I guess.
That's one of the things I love about you, is how humble you are.
Oh, thank you.
So how did you get started in art? Did you draw a lot when you were a child, or did you have any? It sounds like you didn't have professional training as an artist, but so what was the beginning of your art journey, if you will?
The beginning of my art journey was growing up in a family of artists. So I'm a third generation artist. My dad's dad was a lapidarius and worked with rock, mining it and then processing it himself to make, if you go to rock and gem shows, you'll see, all these beautiful rocks cut and polished. He did that kind of work. So I grew up watching him be an artist in his own way. And then my father is a painter, and I grew up in his studio, and he's been making work for 45 years and is a professional artist, meaning I don't think my dad could ever do another job, but I grew up watching him paint. He's an acrylic painter. But my really strange experience in that was my father refused to give me any lessons. So I really, I had one moment he taught me how to make a tree, because he does Western art and sometimes landscape. And that was the extent of what he taught me. And we've talked about it later in life. And he said it was a really conscious decision for him to not do that. So I grew up watching this person, which then became my biggest influence of why I became an artist, but not the kind of art that I make. But I watched this person making art every day and painting and living this artist life. I had access to his supplies, which was pencil, very limited, pencils, colored pencils, and acrylic paint, and then paper and canvases. And that was about it. And he would be making his art, and I kind of had free time to just wander around. But he didn't want me wandering too far. So I was kind of stuck within the studio a lot. And I started making art as a child in sculpting. That was what I was always drawn to, was putting objects together. A lot of times they were from our junk drawer or from the garbage, or I would talk him into taking me to the craft store to get some balsa wood and other random things that I could put together with glue and really simple objects, because I lived in a small town, so it just wasn't, he never like necessarily fed my need to sculpt. It was always led by me and my wanderings of in my own creativity. I was also never really encouraged to be an artist, and I was not encouraged to create necessarily. No one was putting crafting things in front of me as a child, or giving me art supplies for my birthday parties or things like that. So it was I had this very professional, famous artist father, and I grew up very normal. Well, I call it normal, and like the normal space is the people who live outside of being an artist. So I did that. And then when I was a teenager, I had a lot of upset in my life. So I kind of left that creative need in my childhood, which I think a lot of people do just in general. And there it went. And I left it there. And I went to college, not for art or anything, but because that was, what normal people should do, so that I could get my 9-to-5 job and all of that. And I did find myself back to wanting to move my hands. So I started sculpting in chicken wire. And that was just in my apartment, had nothing to do with my classes. And, I had to take a gen ed class in art, and I hated it. It was like the most rudimentary stuff. The basic art classes that I experienced in college and in high school, I thought were fucking ridiculous. And I look back now and I think, oh yeah, because I have this really intense creative mind, and those are set up to make, this pointillism piece, or they're really exposing you to the different kinds of methods of making art. So, and so after college, I took one figure drawing class, which ended up discovering that I have a knack for seeing it, like taking what I'm looking at and just like spilling it out through my hand, meaning I didn't have a lot of, I didn't get jumbled up in my head. So I come to find out I could draw quite well, and was at the top of my class in that course. But I hated college and just didn't know how to function in such a straight-laced space. So I squirreled around and I ended up quitting. And I've had 3 college courses in art, and none of them ever sparked this thing inside me that was like, I want to be an artist. And I left college. I never got a degree or anything. But what did spark me was watching my dad's lifestyle. And that was what I really held on to for all of my life. Was it felt so fitting to my personality, the artist lifestyle, and the freedom to live outside of kind of society's expectations, which I think, people who art is feeding to their soul, or maybe makes them normal, which art does for me. If I'm not creating, I become just not a very balanced person. And I saw that in my dad. When my dad wasn't creating, he got real weird. And I loved that he had a freedom to flow through his life and touch back into his creativity. And that's what attracted me to it. So I went through my 20s, and I had some health issues that took me kind of out of regular life for a couple of years, had a kid. And then at 30, I had a very shocking experience happen. And for the first time, I was compelled to make something in order to process the emotions. And that was the first painting I painted. And humbly, I'll say, later on, everyone was like, "This was your first painting? Oh my God." And it became a really big kind of step where I was like, "Oh, wow, I can do this." And I set out and I said, I'm going to make art every day, and I'm going to teach myself how to do this. And so for the last 8 years, I've been making art every day. I've definitely put in my 10,000 hours at this point, and just sitting in my studio at my desk making art. So that's like the story of Raven and how she got to making these illustrations real quick.
I love it. It's an interesting story, and I want to unpack a couple things. So coincidentally, I haven't been following polishing rocks. Lapidermis, is that what you call lapidermity?
I think it's called lapidary.
Yeah, I think you're right. But this last week, unbeknownst to me, I started watching, and there's I was going to take a hike this weekend because there's this last weekend, but it started raining. There's Fairburn agate field just south of here. And so I was watching all these people talking about agates, and then now I'm talking to you. So what coincidence, right?
Oh yeah, those rockhound people are so cool. They're the weirdest people too. They are just strange ducks, and I love them. My grandfather was that. His rocks were his people. His family didn't mean much to him, but his rocks did.
That's funny, because even like when I was a kid in the 70s, we'd come out to the Black Hills and you would see rockhounds just in droves, right? But I just thought that was so weird that you started talking about that, and I've just been having this experience. And I was like, man, maybe I should get a rock polisher, and those agates are just beautiful. But anyway,
you look the part. You could totally be a rockhound. Dig into that.
And maybe it's because I'm half crazy. I don't know, but
yeah, you got the spark for sure.
There we go. So then the other thing is, I found it interesting that your dad did, like, on purpose, very purposefully, didn't teach you art. So can you unpack that a little bit? What was his reasoning for that?
Yeah, I think he didn't want to influence me. He has a very specific style, and he has always told me that I was a beautiful artist and has encouraged anything I've made. He sees it like it's the next masterpiece. My dad is a really sweet man and has encouraged me in beautiful ways and always lifted me up. And so he thought I was already making amazing art. He didn't feel like it was necessary to sit down and show me how to do it, because he saw it within me that what I was making was right in its own space. And I think with him, and he's also an untrained artist. My dad didn't go to have any education. He's a self-taught. He started much earlier than I did. But he makes his art, but he doesn't spend a lot of time looking at art either. Like he's really about an artist is they're in their own world. They're rightly themselves, and having this influence and going to learn different techniques was never something that was part of his practice. He's always been in his own path making what he makes. And it wasn't about, like going and learning new skills or anything. He's just on his track. And he expands it in himself, but it's really something that he explores within himself. And I think he wanted to impart that, and didn't, since he never went to get classes or anything, he didn't think it was necessary for me to. And one thing I forget to mention, and I kind of mentioned earlier, is I call it growing up in an art desert, because my dad also never took me to see galleries, or I saw my first art museum in my mid-20s. I'd never been in front of art like that before. And my only exposure to art was in our small town. There was a Barnes and Noble that had art magazines, and I could flip through a magazine, and at times would play with my toys on the magazine, interacting with the art. But most of the time it was even just Western art. So he was just in his own world. And I think he thought I was in my own world. And why influence that? You know, if I'm drawing a face, and that's my face, that's my version of how I'm going to draw it. And he didn't feel it's necessary to impart how you draw, quote unquote, draw a face. So I'm appreciative of it. There was a time where that was really frustrating to me, watching this phenomenal painter and being in his studio. I slept there when I was with him. My parents were divorced, but anytime I was with my father during the week, it was in his studio, and it was frustrating why he wouldn't show me as a child. And I felt so inadequate looking at this accomplished artist. I went to his first show, or he had many shows, but the first show I got to go to was in my 20s. Like, my exposure to this world was in this tiny studio, and there wasn't a lot of conversation of how to do things or how to apply color. I didn't know color theory. I had to learn that on my own because he doesn't know how to vocalize a lot of it. So it was a wild experience for sure to have this accomplished person really pushing against giving me any sort of guidance. And I found it frustrating sometimes when he would say, "Oh, this is amazing. This is so beautiful." And I was displeased with it. You know, I thought, well, this isn't what you're doing. Or like, this doesn't look as tight as what he was doing, right? It looked like somebody who was doing rudimentary art. And that frustrated me a lot, and actually kept me out of exploring art for a long time until by the art world standards later in life, I waited, because it is big shoes to fill, to look at somebody so accomplished and think I could just come up and, learn how to do all of this on my own and become a third generation artist. It was a big step for me to take.
So how does he feel about your art now? I'm assuming he's supportive.
Oh, he's crazy supportive. He thinks I've surpassed him at this point, which I think is so sweet. It's phenomenal. He's really blown away by it. And I can hear him now. And I think you're right, Dad. Like, I'm making good art now. He says that what I make is so lyrical compared to, we talk about it being that way. Like, it's a really storytelling art. And he can draw. I don't know. He says he can't do this stuff, but I'm sure he could. We couldn't make each other's art, for sure. Although we have since in the last 4 years ago, I was like, "Okay, give me an art lesson, Dad." And it ended up being a lesson for the both of us, which was really special. So he's wildly supportive of my craft. And we actually work together. I help run his business and helping him step into the technological world of how to sell art. And he also is just like, yeah, this is your art. Like, of course you're really good at it. I've known that your whole life. So he just really is blown away by it. And some of my art also challenges him a little bit, because it's the subject matter can be out there for him, but he thinks it's wonderful and just is really blown away by my skills. Yeah, which is special. I will say one thing. Next year, we're having a father-daughter show, which I have had a dream of doing forever. And I'm pretty excited to see our work together, because it's so different. And because, he influenced my art in how I wanted the artist lifestyle. And so it'll be neat to see how we live that life and bring it together. And I wouldn't say he's necessarily a big influence in the way of what I make or how I found my craft. We make our art very differently, and our processes do not relate to each other at all. But, having a father who continually praises whatever you're making and believes in you was a great impact on coming forward into my art career.
It's so interesting. I mean, you unpacked so much in that story there, and it's so different than what most people would imagine by looking at your art and then knowing that you come from this phenomenal artist, that you have this father that is a phenomenal artist in his own right. You would have made up a narrative, I think, most people in their heads, like what your life would have been like. But I think it's fantastic that he didn't want to intrude on your vision, I guess, is maybe the thought behind that. Like, he didn't want to influence you in a way that would take you in a path that wasn't organic or your own, right?
Yeah. And I think that was because he saw no point in it, what I think back to too, like, why didn't he see a point in doing that? And I think it's because he's always thought that I had this in me to become this. And the things that I made as a child, he was always so blown away by it, so to him, he's thinking, what would I even teach you? Which I think is now, as a parent, as an artist, I think that about people that I see who want to be artists or young people. I'm like, no, what you make is so phenomenal. Like, what do you need to be taught? People want to learn sometimes from me, how do you draw hands or things? And I'm like, no. You got to sit down and do it. I can't teach you, you what you draw, and you're going to think it's probably this gnarly, ugly thing. And actually it's shockingly beautiful. But that's because I don't like art I don't like photorealism necessarily. Side note. Yeah, it is a really unique story. And I think a lot of people, when they hear I'm a third generation artist, I must have grown up in the school of art, and been like taught these things and grown up seeing art and traveling throughout my life, come to find out I had no idea who Dolly was until I was in my 20s, or never saw Vincent van Gogh and those things until I was late in my 20s. I didn't even know who those people were, these huge names in art. Never had that kind of education before.
Yeah, I can totally respect that. It's like a musician that doesn't listen to other music because they don't want to be infiltrated or influenced by what they hear from the outside world. They just want to be in their own realm, creating what they feel and they want to put out there.
Yeah. And I sometimes practice that still. I am very careful about how much art that I look at, but I've gotten to the point now where I have a really, really intimate relationship with my creativity and how I express myself, that I'm able to look at art and break down. It's usually an emotion that I get from the art that might be inspiring. Or a color palette can sometimes inspire me, but I don't generally walk away thinking I want to make this art, or I don't generally walk away finding that it is going to bleed into my art, because I've become so solid in my practice and how I make. But I will say that I also am a human being, and I am influenced by what I see. I'm not without that. I try to be conscious about it, but of course that stuff comes in. And I hear a lot of people talk about, oh, your art I don't recall anything that I could say who you are influenced by. And then other people say that they see other artists in my work. So, it's my own experience, I guess, and how I interact with art in the world and consume it, and what I let come into my studio door with me, so that it isn't, changing what is coming from my soul and what I want to say with this time that I have and in my studio space.
I really like that. And I like the fact that that you're able to look at art, but you don't feel the need to, like, I don't need to necessarily incorporate that. And that's because I'm going to guess, because you feel so solid, and you use that word in your own voice, that it doesn't infiltrate, right?
Yeah, I feel really, really solid in what I have to say now. And when I did start making work 8 years ago, there were moments of influence, and I was making completely different work than I make now. I was using acrylic paint. That's what I was working with. And there were some influences, and I made a conscious decision at that point. And actually, when I started making work, I lived in a town of 1,700 people, and I had very little access to art again, minus what's on the internet and a magazine. So it was easy to say, you know what, I'm just going to set that aside right now and sit in my studio, close the door 40 hours a week, and just start applying my, like try things. That was how I came about it. And it was a conscious decision to really take back like what I was bringing in visually.
So where in Colorado did you grow up? On the Western Slope, is that correct?
Yeah, I grew up in Grand Junction, and my father still lives there, so I go back, went to see him. But I grew up in Grand Junction, and when I was about 18, I left then.
And then is that when you ended up in Denver, or were you living elsewhere?
No, what did I do? I was kind of a wandering soul. I lived in Wisconsin briefly. I ended up in Vermont, and then I did come back to Colorado. I've lived most of my life here. I went to Gunnison. I went to try out a little more higher ed in Gunnison. And then I moved to Denver and lived here for 8 years, I think. And then most recently, I moved to a tiny town called Paonia, and I owned a 4-acre farm there. And that's when I started making art on this farm. And then since then, I had a big life change that required me to move to the city. So I sold my farm and live in Denver now.
Those are some really, like most people, but those are very diverse experiences.
Yes, which was great. I actually appreciate that I went to this really quiet place. I had no other choice but to be quiet and make art. I wasn't driving anywhere like you do in a city. There was no theater to see. Like there was no culture to see. I had to create my own, I have this need I definitely have a need to create and work through, those feelings. And I wasn't going to feed that in other places. By going to galleries or whatever, I had to kind of make that experience myself. So I'm appreciative of that tiny town living. It was really hard to make it as an artist, though. I didn't do bad. I found my craft and I was making good art. I was selling, but it was definitely like, oh, this is would probably be an easier place to live if I was more established, and I need to go to a bigger city. And especially the art I make now is, I think, better fit for an urban space rather than Western Colorado, because they love their aspens and photography there, and I don't make that. So I had to, make the move, which was really important for my career.
So you made that realization about the type of art that you were making, and that was really the catalyst for you to move back to the city?
Yeah, I was part of the catalyst. I'm also queer, so it was hard living in a small town in a rural America. Definitely queer people exist there and thrive there, but I struggled too. So it was a number of things being, I came out, and I was making also a very different type of art while I lived there, which still pushed the boundaries in what people understood of it. But I knew I wanted to make the art that I'm making now, and I just couldn't get there. I couldn't, I started to, and I started seeing it. The art that I make now is actually art that I've always wanted to make. It just took me a long time to finally get up to making it. I was making a lot of different stuff in place of it. And so I just knew I needed a change for my personal life, and because I wanted to expand in making more provocative art and art that addressed things that were deeper than making pretty art or, feminist art. I wanted to reach farther, and I felt held back there. And I'm also a big city person. So I was struggling to find connections. I'm an extrovert and I like to suck everybody's energy out of them and then go pour it into my art. And in a small town, that's kind of hard. People are really, they live their life slowly there, and I need lots of energy, and the city offers that. And I knew I was going to end up in the city. I knew I wasn't there for life. So
did you feel that even growing up as a child? Did you feel that as well, that you wanted to get out of like a small town atmosphere and live someplace where there was a lot more energy and stuff going on?
In Grand Junction, I never felt that, but I think that's because of the life that I had with my dad. My dad had this group of people that I don't think I can say what these group of people are, but they are a wild group of people of really in touch with their emotions and how they get together. It was always very colorful in my dad's world. And they weren't necessarily artists, although I did meet some in our life together. But life with my dad was going to bed at 3 a.m., like listening to rock and roll. And, just I was very close with my dad. So I had tons of fun. I never felt like life was boring and slow because I had this great buddy to go around with. It was, we had great conversations through our life, and we were always high energy, and watching him make things and listening to music and walking to the corner store at 2 a.m. so he could get a Pepsi and a pack of smokes, and then waking him up at 7 to go to school. Like, it was always this really very interesting life. And I didn't feel stuck in Grand Junction. But when I was 18, I did realize, yeah, I don't know if I want to, I want to see what else is out there, because I didn't leave Grand Junction very much. I would go to Wisconsin occasionally, to a very small town. So I didn't have a lot of city experiences. And I thought, oh, now's the time, I guess. You turn 18 and you move on. And so it just felt like the natural thing to do, but I wasn't clamoring to get out of it.
It sounds very bohemian, your lifestyle. You're as a child.
Yeah, it was. It was a really, and I thought it was all normal. I thought that's what everybody's parents were like, and then I come to find out people in town would be like, whoa, your dad's Mark, and I think, oh yeah, that's my dad. He's so rad. He's like the youngest old guy I know. And I think, oh, cool. I thought that's what everyone's dad was like,
The youngest old guy I know. That's funny.
Yeah, he's still that way. He's still a like teenager stuck in an older guy's body. He's still just as vibrant and fun. He's a blast. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Love that.
What was the catalyst? You kind of touched on it, and if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But I'm curious, what was the real push? What was the catalyst to really like make you jump in with both feet to pursue art and be a full-time artist?
Yeah. So when I moved to Gunnison, and I was 21 at the time, I did start setting up a creative space in my home. And I didn't really do much in it, but I always had this like studio, quote unquote, studio space. And that always existed in my homes. So then I went 9 years of kind of moving around a studio space. And I was always playing with like acrylic paint was really what I was going towards, as, watching that in my life. So I always had a studio space that I carried with me. But then at 30, I had met this woman in a bipolar support group. I have bipolar disorder, and she was really important to me. And I woke up one morning and she had died by suicide. It was still to this day the most profound like loss of my life that I've experienced, loss in my life. And I talked to her every day. It was such a deep felt relationship with someone that I had met in this weird space. It wasn't a romantic relationship or this general friendship. It was a deeply felt relationship. And a couple of days later, I received a suicide letter from her. And it just tore me apart. And she always believed in me. And even with my creativity, I would talk to her a lot about knowing I needed to make art, but now I'm a mother. And I also struggle with this mental illness. And I just didn't believe that I could get there. And in her suicide note, she told me that I had made this huge impact on her life that no one in her life had made before. And it was a humbling experience to hear that I had such an impact on her. So she sent me the suicide note and said that, and I had no idea what to do with this loss. And I had a studio space set up in my home, and I went to a craft store to buy a canvas that was rectangular. The piece is on my website. And I painted a sparrow flying on a background that resembles a setting sunset. And that was my response to it. And she had sent me this bracelet that said, all shall be well, all shall be well, and all shall be well. And that's what I named the piece. Yeah, that piece. That was the first painting that I made. And it just came out of me. And I painted that and I thought, oh, I've never done this before in my life. I had no idea how to apply color like this, how to use paints like that. And I just set out to say, I'm going to do it. You know, watching my friend end her life and not achieving her dreams just was no longer an option for me as someone who struggles with mental illness. And I just came to paint her this painting, which was a really profound experience. And then hearing the feedback on it, a lot of people were like, Raven, what is this? Where did this come from? And I kind of felt the same way. I was like, I had no fucking clue I could do this. I had no idea. And that was what started me out saying, okay, I have to do this. I have the skills. I just have to believe in it. And that's how that started. That's how the career started, I guess, at this point.
Wow. That's
a beautiful piece.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
And
so why the sparrow?
I felt like that was the right thing for death. It felt like, you know, those tiny sparrows are always around in our life. And I had known that people got them tattooed, and it just felt like the right bird. It has no special meaning to it. It was just like, yeah, sparrow seems like the right thing. It felt like the right bird to fly away for her.
That's
so
awesome.
it was, yeah, nothing terribly. And I think they're really just like special birds too. I painted birds for a number of years. That's what I started out with, was painting in acrylic and painting birds in these more abstract backgrounds. I would not as often have them flying. Mostly I would have them grounded, but they would be in these abstract spaces.
I love them. I'm perusing your portfolio, and, you know, obviously there's the Raven, obviously. And
yeah,
the
which
Cardinal.
Raven are you looking at?
Well, there's a couple. The very first one at the very bottom, it's called Fortune Hunter. That's
Fortune. Yes. Yeah. That was an early one.
Yeah.
That one. And then the one with Command, the one with Command, the ravens really came out, and the birds came out as processing emotions, which was when I discovered that art was important for me to help balance my mental health and to feel like I could function in the world. I struggled a lot with how to be in the normal world. And once I started making this work, that might have been Command might have been the first Raven I painted.
Well, it's beautiful. And I love the red, how it comes up in the, you know, on the sides. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So talk about that piece a little bit.
So Command was created as a response to a very close family member starting to be taken over by methamphetamines. It was a shocking experience in my life and very devastating. And that was my response to it, was just like calling out to how the drug like steals your soul. I've never been angry at the person for that. It's really angry that our society thinks these people are horrible people, and it's really not them. So it's the anger against the drug and how it has taken a family member and turned them into a shell of themselves. And a lot of these pieces most of my work has very, very deep meaning to it and has some kind of story. Not always these, suicide and drug use, but it was a great way to express myself with these birds. And ravens are really special to me. And it felt like the right bird to really call out the anger and calling away the experience.
Both Todd and I are huge Raven fans. And I'm not sure I think I'm a big Poe fan. So then there's the poem, the Raven. So I don't know if that's where it comes from, but I love paintings of ravens, and your paintings are exquisite. And
thank you.
So the question I have, and you don't have to answer this one if you don't want to, but is Raven your real name, or is that your given name? Or and I'll delete this if you don't want to talk about it. But anyway.
All right. You know what? I get asked this question all the time, and now I'm going to put it on your podcast, and people can do with it what they want. Raven is my real name because that is my name. So I'll say that.
Okay.
But it is also a chosen name that I chose when I was 7.
Nice.
And so I have a legal name, but I haven't gone by it for 20 years. And as a child, I didn't call myself that. And there's a story to it, but that piece, it's kind of beside the fact. But I love the question, is Raven your real name? And it's like, of course, that's what people call me. And that's what I call myself. I have called myself Raven since I was a child. And I think it's a beautiful experience. Sometimes we're born with names that aren't fitting to us. And, choosing our own name is a normal experience. And especially if you get into the queer spaces, there's a really important aspect of choosing our names and removing ourselves from past people that we weren't really, we were in the closet. But so it's even more special to me because I think this is the person I've always been, but I was given a different name.
Okay. I was just curious of that. I mean, it's a beautiful name, and I could see it either way, right? Your given name or not. I mean, it's not like it's uncommon, but it's
but it is my name, and I chose it because ravens are scavengers. That was why I wanted to be named Raven, because I thought they were cool and they were scavengers, which is played out very interesting in my life. I've had to be a scavenger in my life, and collecting shiny things, or the more I learn about ravens, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, as a 7-year-old child, I just knew that was the better name for me. And in school growing up, I saw the other kids who had my given name, and I thought, I am nothing like those people. Like, it was not a good name. And a lot of people will say, your name was what? That is so not you. And I think, I know it wasn't. I'm Raven.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I love the idea. And, obviously I go by my given name. So, but I love the idea of selecting your own name. Maybe that's what we should do. Like, you can have a given name until you hit a certain age, puberty or whatever, or, have a spirit walk and come up with your name or whatever. Well, but I love that idea.
That's what happened in my family. The women in my family, none of them kept their name. The women changed their name. That's just, you don't keep it. So it was kind of a family thing too, where all the other women for generations have changed their names. It was like, well, okay, you gave me this name at birth and you were wrong. So we're going to go with this other one.
That's funny. The weird thing about my family, and not in my case, but most of the past generations, they went by their middle name, which is really, my grandfather's Artie Merwin. He went by Merwin. Hell, half the town didn't even know his name was Artie. So he got a speeding ticket once, and that was the big joke: is who in the hell is Artie Adams?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So,
well, I think having changed my name, I do call myself Raven, but I also have gone through this whole experience of what does a name mean? Like what the fuck are we doing with these names? Like it doesn't even mean anything. If you can change your name, you kind of have this moment where you're like, who am I? I'm just a human. Like why do I have to call myself anything? Like it was kind of a funny experience of realizing, well, what makes me this person? Because before I thought, oh, it was your name. I am Raven, and now I just think I'm so much more than Raven. But Raven's what you call me, when I'm like listening to my AirPods and drawing. That's the name that people scream at me, and I guess that's how you get a hold of me.
So obviously, if you're the women in your family change their names or don't go by their given name, so it pretty seamless when you were 7, start calling me Raven.
No, people refuse to call me Raven. I still have people in my life who refuse to call me Raven, and a lot of times I won't answer to them, not because I'm like fighting back, but it's because I have no idea who they're talking to. I've gone when I was 18, I finally got to leave my hometown, at that time. And I made a break then. I had some friends when I was a kid that would call me Raven because I would ask them to, but they thought it was kind of weird and funny. Why would you do that? And then at 18, I was like, I introduced myself as Raven all the time. And in college, I would correct I'd say, oh, I go by Raven. And there are people in my life now who don't even know my given name. They know I have one, but I won't tell them that. And I won't tell you that either.
And that's fine. We don't.
And Raven Rohrig is that's a way better name. That's a good artist name,
It flows. It flows.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why I was really unsure, but I just was, evidently like everybody else, just kind of curious if that was your given name or not. But yeah, well, obviously you're Raven to us, and we love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll definitely die Raven. I haven't changed my name legally because it's a pain in the ass, but I'm like, I really should.
You should.
Like, yeah. I don't know why I didn't do that when I lived in the small town of Paonia. I could have walked into the courthouse. Now I have to go through Denver's, that was a dumb fucking idea to skip up how easy it would have been in Paonia. Now I'm back in Denver and I'm like, this is going to be a chore. But
yeah, it's probably easier. And I'm not advocating this, but women do it all the time because they get married and a lot of times they take their husband's last, the most of the time. So it's just kind of common, but like for me or Todd to do it, I think it's even more of a chore, because we're men,
Yeah. Changing your first name is hard, but yeah. And even further to that, trans people have a terrible time of changing their name. It's a funny business, this whole name thing, and our society's like obsession with names and like sex markers and things like that,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Good question, Wes Brown. I was not going to go there.
Thanks.
I know Raven as Raven, but in my research, I came across her legal name.
Did
I did.
you?
No.
Where did you find it?
It wasn't too hard, actually.
No.
But I'm a Google master. I will say that. Anyway,
he works for the CIA on the side.
But yeah, I wasn't going to go down that path, but that's an interesting story. And I'm glad you shared that with us. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, thanks for sharing, because you could have easily just passed on the whole thing. And, but I think it's a great story. And I think people always say this. I think there's somebody out there that needs to hear this, and it's going to make an easier decision for them to either take a new name or take the name that they connect with and leave the other one behind.
Oh, hell yeah. You should do that. I
might change mine. Hell,
when I'm 80, I'm going to change my name again.
Nice.
I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'm going to also start drinking scotch again, and I'm going to become a smoker. Like I've never been a smoker, but I know it would be really fucking satisfying. And I was like, when I'm 80, I'll be at the end of my life. Like, I'm just going to rage. I'm going to live in a loft and make art alone all the time and have like endless lovers and smoke cigarettes and drink scotch. And I'm going to go by Jet. Like, I'm just
see, I thought you were going to go by Rage. I think you should go by Rage.
No, I like Jet. Jet is awesome.
But that's what I'm going to do when I'm 80, because I'm definitely a wild person, but I also like to make really healthy life choices. And I want to live really long. I want to be one of those old women artists who's just making wild art, and she's just like old and living the life, But I'll do that when I can like run out my liver at that point. And,
there you go.
Doesn't matter what my lungs are doing anymore.
Yeah, just go for broke, man.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
I've thought about that a lot, actually. Like if I was terminal or, at a certain age, screw it, man. I mean, I love the idea. I love smoking. I'm a former smoker. I haven't smoked in years, but I love the whole process of smoking. And I still have dreams about me smoking. And I think, man, when I reach a certain age, screw it. I'm going to start rolling cigarettes again. I'm going to enjoy my tobacco, maybe drink a little bit more. Yeah. I'm not a big drinker these days, but maybe drink a bit more and just go for broke.
That's what I'm saying. And I can see it sitting there looking at my drawing while I'm smoking a cigarette and waiting for the next piece to reveal itself. Like I know that'll be good.
And there's something about when my mom was a smoker, when the ash is like, and like 2 inches long, like most of it is ash and there's just a little bit of cigarette left and they haven't flicked it off yet. And they're taking this big, long drag and there's this big, long ash that's just hanging there.
Perfect. Isn't that just so sexy?
My mom smoked almost till she died, but she loved smoking and she loved the experience of smoking. I talked about that.
It's the ritual. I'm a very ritualistic person, which is why I love drinking and But I will say, this whole conversation of waiting till you're 80 to live, I also have done a lot of things in my life that I'm not waiting for. I think our society has been taught to go to your 9-to-5 job and you'll live when you retire. And I'm, as an artist living kind of in the outskirts of life, it's like, no, you got to live it now. You got to dig into those things now. And because, why wait? You don't even know if you have that anyway. Yeah. Who knows if I'll live till I'm 80, could get hit by a car tomorrow.
That's right. Yeah. We live on a very fragile veil of life.
Yeah. So live it now, take that. Coming out as queer, that was part of it too. I thought, well, I've lived a long life in the closet and it's just not worth it anymore. Living that authentically or making the art that is fulfilling to me, it's not worth it anymore to hide it. And the experience I had of making the art that's been inside me for so long is the art I'm making now, and it's really phenomenal. It's like beautiful art, I'm so glad I stopped waiting.
Once again, I'm going to ask questions that feel free to dodge. Okay. Why do you label yourself as queer? What is it about it what about that word makes you identify as queer? And then can you explain what it was like coming out?
Sure. I label myself as queer because I'm not easily defined in my LGBTQ status. So if people were to ask me, I am bisexual. But in our society, if you're not really dug into the LGBTQ space, and even within LGBTQ space, bisexuals are often misunderstood and marginalized, and bi erasure is a real thing. So when people hear that I'm bi, they might think that I like men and women, and that's not the case. I actually like all genders, but it's a quicker way to say, I'm bi, but there's always an assumption on the binary. So I say queer because it also just defines that I'm a little more ephemeral. There isn't a clear definition of it. It's more fitting for me. I've never felt like I like labels. I think they're really important for me, but I like to also have space to be ever changing in them. And also my gender expression, I'm a cis woman, but I express it in different scenarios and different relationships. My gender expression changes in relationships, so queer is just fitting for me. And for me, making sure that people know that I'm queer, one, I feel like I have the safety and privilege to do that. And there are other queer people out there who don't. And I think it's important for them to see that some of us are able to be out and making cool art and pushing the boundaries. You know, people, I think, a lot of times hear that and they think I only make queer art, which I don't. Queer artists make art for everybody, just like straight people make art for everybody. But I like to be labeled. It also helps me not feel erased, because we live in a world where cis heteronormativity and mononormativity are constantly in our mind, like on a billboard. It's everywhere, and queer people exist, and we don't have the joys of seeing ourselves, you know, play out in media as heavily, and definitely as children we never saw that. We don't get to see queer people as often at our age, you know, because of the AIDS epidemic that killed off so many of our queer elders. And so it's important to me to take that space, and especially reaching middle age, I think of younger people, like seeing an older queer woman and being out and happy and living her life is important. So I actually came out and it was kind of an awakening in a way of like, oh my God, this has been here forever. But the words were never presented to me, especially in Grand Junction, Colorado. And I came out because of a relationship where somebody else came out, where the person came out in my relationship, and it made me question my sexuality. And it was a lovely discovery of myself, knowing that it has been there all along, and kind of a, oh my gosh, how did I miss that moment? How did I miss that I was attracted to those people, or that I felt this way about my gender, and why I kind of always struggled with feeling swimmy in my gender, and I guess is the best way to describe it. So, so I came out late in life, and, you know, it's ever changing. It's a slow process to coming out as you discover more about yourself. And it also started coming out. I'm polyamorous as well. And I came out polyamorous around the same time that I came out queer. So, and it was also about some of these things I did know about myself for a long time, but I didn't know that was an option. And I got to a point where I thought, I am not functioning well in being closeted. It wasn't an option. And I reached a point where I thought, I cannot live this way anymore. I need to be my full self, to be a better artist, to be a better partner, to be a better mother, better friend, better person, and enjoy my life. So it was, you just kind of reach it. For me, I reached a boiling point where it just had to happen. So.
Thanks for sharing. Both my questions, you explained in such a very concise and great way. So I appreciate the fact that you were willing to talk about it and be open about it. And the way you described it was just beautiful. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I know not every person will be as open about it, but I have always been someone who's very out. And I think it's really great. And I have heard other people who are really out, and they've had a big influence on me. And I feel safe and comfortable to be open about who I am. And so, you know, I want to be there for the other people that may hear it or may see me, read my bio, whatever, and feel a sense of comfort in that. You know, even for straight people, like taking up who you are and your authenticity. My work is a lot about authenticity and being like wholly who you are and going through your experience and owning that. And in the face of a world that does not seek authenticity and is quite fearful of authenticity.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah. Like Wes said, I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to discuss that. And I can only imagine what it must be like to live even a part of your life where you don't feel like you're being authentic to yourself, you know, that you have to keep that charade up, or you have this barrier between what you put out there in the world and your authentic self, right? And so I can appreciate that. I have a daughter who's identifies as bi and queer, and we have a lot of conversations because I don't know all the labels and terminology. And so sometimes I have questions, and like, it's good for me to have these discussions with her because she can explain it really well, just like you did yourself. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks for asking the question.
So talk about some of the evolution of your work in the past 8 years. We talked about some of those earlier pieces, and that first piece, like we already discussed, I love that piece. All shall be well. You can read so much into that, hearing the backstory behind it. Talk about where your work has gone and where it's at right now.
It's been an interesting evolution. I will say that. It's kind of blown my mind how I found myself into these very different creations. I have 3 main phases, I would say, of my work, including the one that I'm in now. The first ones were the birds, and then kind of turned into heavy on the ravens. And those were acrylic paintings, which was an easy kind of start for me. Acrylic paint was accessible. The small town that I lived in, all I had was a craft store for an art supply store, and I hate buying stuff online. It is the biggest pet peeve of mine. So I had access to acrylic paint, and so that's kind of where I went. And I had like dreams of doing beyond acrylic paint, working with mixed media and drawing, but the painting was just, I loved how I could play with depth and, work with colors. It's where I learned my color theory. I've read one detail about color theory, which unlocked it for me, and then just explored that through the bird paintings that I did.
Do share that one thing.
One thing. Okay, I read this one thing that there are cool and warm primary colors. And I was like, what? And that was all I needed. I was like, okay, I understand, how to mix them. I think tertiary is a word. Like, I have so little information about art and color theory. I am the worst artist because I don't even know. I could tell you secondary, tertiary starts getting a little sketch for me. But I really go off of this like hullabaloo of, I mix my colors off of feelings, yeah, man. But I really do. So
that's awesome. No, I appreciate that. I love the giving the one tip that, because somebody else's mind might be blown too.
Yeah, it blew my mind. And I thought, that's why when you mix these, and then what I discovered about myself is I can see cool and warm. I have this innate understanding of color. So I discovered that it was within me, and I can see colors in very minute ways and express them. So I did the bird paintings, and that's where I did a lot of learning about just like all the basics of how to compose a work of art. And after that, I thought, well, these are great, and I want to keep doing them, but I wanted to do some kind of portraiture. I love bodies, and but I didn't believe that I could do them anymore. I had that one class I had where I was drawing these photorealistic like models, and then I felt like I lost it, and I was really afraid to get back to it. And so I wanted to do portraiture, but I wanted to make it contemporary because I feel like I'm not really drawn to portraits of actual people because I don't know who they are. And I can appreciate somebody's skill of doing a portrait, but I wanted to make them something that a story could be built for the viewer, where they could form a relationship with the work, which is still a big part of what I make. I really I have a relationship with the piece, which is cultivated in the process. Once it's completed, I move on from the painting, and I release it, it's ready for somebody else to form a relationship with. But I moved on to these women, and I would say non-binary people as well, because sometimes I wouldn't do them so much feminine, but I was doing these women with their eyes covered with, I still don't know what to call it, and I still can't necessarily. This is a later one. I'll get into that one. I started out by just painting them in 2D with acrylic paint. Like that one. Yeah, that one. So I wanted to do contemporary portraiture that had power behind them. And I feel like eyes give it away. Like shape of eyes, color of eyes that just becomes such a specific person. And I couldn't figure out how to make these feel kind of like have depth in the painting, but also flatten them with eyes. So I removed the eyes and put this hair towel shroud. What, I don't know. I've had so many people call them the hat. I don't know what to call them even. This series I still don't have the words quite figured out for it. They became I felt them. They were really powerful. So I painted these for a really long time, and I have one left. So they've always found a home, and people hate them, and they want to tell me how much they hate them and why they hate them. And then people are obsessed with them. And I felt like I was hitting the nail on the head then. I loved that people were having these really strong feelings to the work. And what I started feeling from them was they were talisman or had some sort of spiritual feeling to them and a feminine power to them. So I really worked on those for quite a while. Do you have any questions about that series before I go to the next?
I don't know if I have a question about it. Well, I'm sure the question will come, but when I look at it, I see hair. So I'm in the hair group. If there's a group of people that see hair, I'm in that group. I really thought maybe these are really like most painters, their art is autobiographical. So I really got the sense this is autobiographical from your sense. And then the shrouded eyes really intrigued me. So there is something about these, because it's a collection of very similar, well, the subject matter is the same. So I guess it really, now I'm interested, right? Now I'm in it because I've seen, 8 to 10 of them or whatever. And so it's interesting. So I'm just dying for the backstory. I'm dying for the symbolism, but you're kind of saying that there really isn't any.
Well, so then it became that they did have symbolism.
Okay.
And I keep creating them because there's something spiritual about them. But a lot of what started coming to me as I made them was the things that they have to say. A lot of people pick out, side note, I think it's hair too. So whoever wants to think whatever. But I never make them smile because I'm a really smiley person. But I have heard many times in my life, as a lot of women have, that when we're not smiling, we are told to smile to be pleasing and to avoid our strong feelings, our anger. And so it was really important to me that they don't smile because they have things to say. They're right in who they are, and became more powerful to me when they weren't looking pleasant. And so it did become a series that had a feminist voice to it, about the strength of women and the power that we hold and the secrets that we hold and share amongst with each other. And that became this expression of them become, like, when you're in a room with them, they are pretty powerful. I did a solo show in my small town, and I painted them huge. So most of these, you can see they're pretty small, and I painted them really big, and they became really powerful that way and take up a space and become really intriguing and elicit strong emotions of people loving them, people hating them. people think they're depressed, which they're not depressed at all. In fact, they're feeling really authentic in themselves.
Before you go away, Todd, Todd is showing, it's called Canary in the Heart. And it's 10 foot by 8 foot. And I'm glad you were talking about
inches.
It's
10 inches. Oh, I seen one line. I'm sorry. I thought it was 10 foot. I was like, that would be huge. But
it would
okay,
be phenomenal huge, that piece.
Oh my God. This is a powerful piece. I love this one. And probably because the other ones are kind of shoulder shots.
Yeah, this is very different.
This is a full length. Yeah. The color palette, the use of orange and turquoise and how they interrelate with each other is powerful. And I love the background and how you have that all set up. And then the bird flying away is just magnificent. This is a fantastic piece. And probably of the ones that I've seen today, this is probably my favorite.
Oh, I love that. I did not do a lot of full length of them. They were really portraits that I was going towards. But this piece I felt like I hit the nail on the head with this piece. And I was still learning how to apply my paint. And this was really early on in making this series. It might have been like the second or third one that I painted.
Wow.
This shows me you understand color theory with the use of the turquoise and the orange. I mean,
those
you
colors
nailed it.
Together are so beautiful. The way they vibrate off of each other.
Yeah. It's a stunning piece. Thank you for painting this, because this is a stunning piece. And if it wasn't sold, I would be jumping on this one.
And then I'd have to fight Wes for it. And then
I know this one sold like 6 years ago. It's been long gone.
I have to track it down.
I know who it is. I can tell you. She might not get rid of it though.
No, I'm sure she wouldn't. It's a great piece. So I do love this.
It
one.
is absolutely stunning.
So much.
Tell us the name of this whole series. Do you have a name for it?
The Wisdom of Women.
The Wisdom of Women. Love the name. Love the whole series.
Yeah. And the birds are called the Lonely Flock because a lot of them were addressing like that sense of loneliness or, when you're left to yourself and they're presented alone. I don't think I've ever painted two birds in one painting. No, I've never painted two birds in one painting. So I call that one the Lonely Flock.
That's cool.
So and this series, sorry.
I was just one more comment and then you can talk about this series. On the website where the Wisdom of Women, the first line is, and I won't read the whole thing, but the words are so powerful. Feminine power in the divinity of the feminine body. I love that saying. So
thanks.
Yeah.
I'm not great with words, so I've crafted that over 8 years.
I love the saying, or the statement.
Yeah, that I think that right there, that'll tell you what these pieces are about the feminine and the power of femininity. So after I painted these for a really long time and just did acrylic painting, and then it was one day I saw that you could embroider a photograph. Like I saw somebody was embroidering photographs, and there was this one piece that I made, which is this mixed media. So then I took them to mixed media, and the first one I made, and I thought, oh my God, you can put stuff in them. And so they've evolved into the mixed media that they are now. And I like that there can be tokens in them and different textures and materials. And that opened up my process in a significant way. It changed how I make art. It changed how I see my creativity. It changed how I think about what I make. It like unleashed this like monster in my brain where I discovered how deeply creative I am by the process of making these pieces. And that's how I make them now. I don't paint them 2D anymore. And I get into this I can't find the word for it ever, but I really just I dive down into my creativity and I'm crafting these pieces now. Even my illustrations, that's how my illustrations are made. And in the mixed media pieces, on my Instagram, you'll see a picture somewhere in there of my storyboards. And that was something that came out of these pieces.
Yeah, I was just noticing that you have your sketchbook, and then you'll have the drawing or the painting of the woman, and then you have all this verbiage, and so this is you crafting out the image or the portrait.
Yeah, so that's when the series took a turn and my process like exploded. Was when I started, because what I found in making the mixed media pieces is I had no idea how to apply any of these materials, and I couldn't just go right into the piece. I had to test things out, and I wanted to keep track of that. So I have like big watercolor pages that I paint on. I'll stick embroidered pieces on. I'll put the thread on it. I started illustrating pieces from it, which was really crazy. I thought, oh, they're so pleasing to me. They're beautiful to me. The storyboards have become their own piece of art. And that's when I started realizing that the best way that I can explain it is that I'm making art while making art while making art. It's this loop that I enter in, and all of these things, these byproducts of the art, become their own pieces of art just to get to this final mixed media piece. And all of that was, like this process of discovering things. I discovered how to use ink markers in the way that I use them. I discovered how to work with watercolor, or I can't sit down and do a watercolor piece right away. I would have to really work on that. But I learned how to apply them in a way that fit the series, and where I could learn to control the materials a little more and understand them, and things that I pick up from the world on my walks. Like I pick up a lot of things on my way through the world, and I'll put them into the pieces. The most recent one that I don't make the mixed media pieces as often right now because I'm looking for a place to show them. And so I don't have a lot of space, so I can't stockpile them. But the most recent one I found a black widow that had died on my front porch, and I put that into the piece.
And that one's called Heart, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a 6x6 mixed media piece. And I was going to ask you, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you, is that that was a real black widow then, huh?
That bitch is real. Yeah. It was crazy. It was dead when I finally picked it up, but it was still very malleable. So its arms would I would hold it up and they would flop away. It was so creepy.
Oh my
God. In working with it was challenging. It made me skeeve out a couple of times where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. But I was so dedicated to putting it in this piece. It was critical that it had to be in this one. And this woman I actually have made before, but she needed to be made again with this neon, because I had a guy way back in the day from my dad's circle of artists who told me that women can't use neon in art because they don't know how to use it, and it was a man's world. Flat out just said that.
Wow.
To me. And so,
oh my God, that's so awesome. I know.
Thanks, dude. So I didn't use it for a long time, and neon. My dad uses neon in his work. And I thought I never could. So I've started using neon now over the last couple of years. And this piece felt like a great way to apply it. And then that Black Widow just, was beautiful.
That's awesome.
And it looks like it's still available.
Yeah, this one is available. I have 3 mixed media pieces available right now.
Yeah, it's awesome. And what a great FU to comment that women can't use neon.
I know.
What a silly thing. People.
I don't understand that either.
Anybody can use anything.
Sad guy. Sounds like he lives in a world of rules, and I really feel sorry for him because, when you're living in a world that you think it's just confined by rules, you're not living authentically. So
yeah. Yeah. I think anybody can do anything if they want to. And I don't see any limitations based on gender or anything. Yeah. Just do you, boo, is what I say.
Exactly. Yeah. And you'll live so much happier.
Exactly.
So then I started making, I had to wait for paint to dry, which I'm working with acrylic paints and watercolor in Colorado. So this is literally very short amount of time. But in my discovery of the mixed media pieces, they're like a apply and then let sit for quite a while because of how I'm layering them with so many different materials. Like this piece has watercolor, it has ink, it has the embroidery, it has acrylic, it has gouache. I think that's all that's in this piece, but how you apply those to each other, you really need things to be dry.
And what part of this piece is gouache? I'm just curious. Is it the hair?
Yeah, there's gouache in the hair. And I might have made the skin I might have used gouache for that one.
And the substrate is paper, huh? Is it watercolor paper or?
Yeah, it's watercolor paper.
Yeah.
And the watercolor paper is stiffer for embroidering. It's important that you have a stiffer paper, especially because I put the holes so close to each other. So I was waiting for paint to dry, and that's when I discovered the illustrations and when I started making them. And we can go into how I make those, because those are a whole other way of making art.
So this is now your third evolution of your art.
Yeah.
Well, probably more than that, but I mean,
I would say there's three main evolutions. The women had their own evolution within them, but those are the three ones are the flock, the lonely flock, the wisdom of women, and then into intrinsic illustrations. I started making illustrations as I was waiting for paint to dry. As a child, I did play this game, and I know a lot of people will, when I tell you about the process, they'll be like, oh yeah, I've done that, or I played that as a kid. And I always say, well, now I'm making a living out of this game, which is really cool. So this is an older piece, but I was making, to start off my illustrations, they were really small, like really small. And I would scribble. I started off actually first on a wall. I put up a piece of paper and I scribbled on it, and then I would find things in it. Like it's like a look and find drawing. So if you draw shapes, or if you just scribble on a piece of paper and you look at it long enough and you kind of relax yourself, you're going to start seeing stuff in it. Your brain's going to start completing the lines into an animal, like you might see a cat or something. And so I was doing that on these big pieces of paper, and it was very much to what I was doing as a child. We would sit down and scribble on the paper and find really silly things in it. So I was doing that, and to pass the time, because I have always wanted to be an illustrator. That was my dream, was that I could draw like very, very beautiful line work, and that's what I could do. And I had no idea how to get there. I had no idea how to learn those skills. And so I started discovering like, oh, maybe I can draw these really weird things or characters. I would love to make a graphic novel. I don't know how to draw characters and things like that. So I had a spark happen that if I scribble, it gives me enough jumping point to a subject that I can find and I can draw out. And I was doing this big. So I started cutting up paper and using scraps of paper to see if I could then scale it down. And I love color a lot. And I thought, well, we can't do this without color. And I didn't want a lot. And I have learned that in illustrations, the colors that I apply, mostly they're circles, but sometimes I'll do paints, or like I'll use a paintbrush and really do a big section of it. But I discovered that it creates this background for the drawing, and the drawings interact with the circles subconsciously. When the circles are there, I kind of just forget they're there and I go into a drawing. But I started putting color down on these little pieces of paper, and I would do a quick scribble on top, and my eyes would pick out things in them. The more that I did those, the more that I fell in love with them. They were so satisfying, and I was getting this feeling of like drawing that I hadn't done before. And that's how this series started, was through waiting for the paint to dry. But it has gone towards what is like really important to me and the kind of work that I wanted to make. I wasn't drawing a lot of bodies in the beginning because that was just not, although that piece, do you see the body in that piece? I didn't know how to do that. I couldn't figure out how I could incorporate them. And later on, when I started drawing the bodies, I don't have models for the people that I put, or the bodies that are in the work now. I discovered if I close my eyes, I can take an object and spin it around, and I can generally get to the form of it enough that I can draw it out. And also, I'm in the confines of the scribble. So the bodies get contorted, or they become these different shapes, or the hands, because I am stuck within the lines of, at some point, not always, not the full image, but there's definitely a big portion of them that I'm stuck within using the lines that are there. And the subject matter that comes out is just kind of what comes to mind, but there is an overreaching theme to the intrinsic illustrations that I do come to the paper with, but none of these are pre-planned drawings. They all just like slowly reveal themselves to me, and then I draw them out.
They're absolutely stunning. And this is the work that I saw first when I was introduced to one of the things that you do. And I'm absolutely in love with it. And it's interesting for everybody that's listening. If you go to Raven's website and you scroll her portfolio and kind of start where the illustration starts and work your way up, you can really kind of see exactly what she's talking about as far as like the evolution of how this is, how it has come to be, what it's evolved into, I think. And yeah,
so these started becoming important to me. And I will note, because people will notice, there's 3 dots in the illustrations. Mostly, you showed the heart one. Nope, they're there. So I draw the 3 dots. They're the 3 stages of a woman's journey through her life and her sexuality: the maiden, the mother, and the crone. The work has always had that aspect to it, because I knew I wanted to express that side of me about intimacy and eroticism and connection and relationship. And in the beginning, I didn't know how to draw that out. So that was my nod to, like, and I mean, I'm very revealing, I guess, but intimacy and eroticism and sexuality is really important to me. And that was the way that I could put it out in the beginning, until I finally just started drawing it directly into the piece, because a lot of them were not necessarily on a theme. The earlier pieces did not follow that theme, but the 3 dots were a way to incorporate it into it.
So the idea was there, and the idea is still in each one of these pieces, even from the beginning. But what you're looking at is the evolution to where you are today, where it's more explicit.
Yeah.
It was a journey, it sounds like.
Yeah, because I didn't know how to draw where I'm at today. I had never drawn like this before. I have tried to sit down and draw, just like cool things. That's how I see them, is like wanting to draw cool things, these stories, these lyrical drawings, where there's a whole story to each piece. And I could not figure out how to do that. But by scribbling and seeing that they came into there, that's when I found, oh, I can do this. And it built my skill. And after drawing so many, it built my skills and my confidence that I could start putting those in there. And if you look back, the earlier pieces, I mixed them in there a little bit, but the really earlier pieces, I had not come out yet. So definitely coming out has changed the work as well, because I started going through the coming out process as a queer person. And that's when the work started changing too, because I had to find a way. I've always expressed my emotions through my art. That's how I process them. And I put a lot of care and emotion into my work, which is why I think it comes out so powerful for other people, because I'm pouring just as much power and emotion and intention into them.
How much has played into the perception, or how much of the vulnerability of you sharing, being vulnerable, how much has that played into people really being drawn into what you do?
I think it has a huge impact on viewers. I think it plays a big part in why the art is received the way that it is. And I love it for that. I speak to that in my artist statements and things like that. Vulnerability are really important to me. And I know for human connection to receive, to get to that ultimate space that we all want of unconditional love, vulnerability is the first movement towards that. And so I apply that to my art. And I will speak very honestly and vulnerable about my art, because I think, I may be this random artist, stranger, pretty much standing in a gallery talking about my work, but they're going to walk away from it. When you see somebody else being vulnerable, it gives you the energy to step out and grasp that for yourself. And I think the people see that in the work. And bodies bring vulnerability because they're always naked. And so I'm just flat out like, this is vulnerable. Or when I'm drawing kink and BDSM into my work, that is incredibly vulnerable. And those in the kink spaces see that. Or those not in the kink spaces might see that stuff and be like, whoa. And so in that way, it is always presenting as vulnerable work. And that gives people a place to step. They're going to they see themselves in it, or they are impacted by it. It creates an emotion for them too. This is what I've learned as people talk about my work or tell me about it. There's always this story that they have when they see my work. And I think that's it. That's not my story. And that's great. I had my story with the work, and now it goes off to theirs.
I have this piece pulled up, The Weeping Bird. Is this an earlier piece?
Yes. Yeah, that was around the time that they switched over from the really small pieces, which were, these are really cool. I sold the small pieces for, I can't even tell you how much money I sold them for, because I didn't value them as a whole new series. I thought they were just this, like, I do this when I'm waiting for paint to dry thing. And then the Weeping Bird, the Heart one, and there's a couple others that then became, I was like, oh, these are illustrations. I'm on my way to I opened the door to a collection. And that's when I noticed the birds that I painted will not be painted anymore. Because I found where I'd been going. I had taken my next step, and the Weeping Bird was definitely a piece that I was like, oh, this is really powerful. And these are illustrations. These are fine art and intentionally made.
I love this piece. It's just absolutely stunning.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a favorite of mine too. I actually, a family member bought this one, which is really special. So I get to visit it.
Tenet wants to acknowledge our media sponsor, New Magazine. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine. and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. And I want to share with you something very exciting. Check out the newly launched New Denver Gallery Guide. Look for the signage that says New Denver Gallery Guide that has a QR code. Scan it with your phone, and you have instant access to a comprehensive digital guide to Denver's finest galleries and exhibitions. Find this QR code in your favorite gallery, hotel, or coffee shop as you visit and explore Denver. Thanks for listening.
I'm Raven Rohrig, and you're listening to the Tenet Podcast.
Let's talk about some of the newer pieces, though. And I'm going to pull up another piece. And this is one of my favorites called My Honey.
Oh.
You can find it on Raven's Instagram and on our website. This one is just out of this world. I just love it on so many different levels.
Thank you. It's interesting seeing sometimes my work will change in a moment's notice. And people say that you've never done this before. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is because of the lines. Like they call for different things, those initial lines that I lay down. And I always think, will I ever make something as good as this before? Again, My Honey had, it was like, this one was such a powerful piece for me. I was just talking to an artist friend of mine that I'm not a drug user because I make art, which is a drug. And I was so high off of this piece. I had a hard crash. It lit my brain up like fire. And I knew it was an accomplishment when I made this. And I dug deeper into this one, like the honeycomb. I made a stamp. Like I went and got rubber and I thought, okay, I want it to look organic, but I'm not one to like, I'm going ink to paper. I don't do pencil on my drawings. Occasionally I'll imprint a drawing. So there will be a touch of pencil, but I don't draw it first. I go right into ink to paper. But this one, I knew the honeycomb would have to be somewhat exact. Otherwise it would throw off the whole painting or the whole drawing. People would just focus on the massive inconsistencies. So I made a stamp for this piece just in that. Otherwise I draw directly, but this piece started out, sometimes the best way I can explain it is go through the journey of it, because that's what they are for me. And it started out with the honey, what do you call that? The little, it's the dipper, the honey dipper. I saw a honey dipper in it and I thought, oh, that's rad. How do I draw honey? I'm always on this place with illustrating where I'm like, how do you draw water with ink? How do you draw fabric with ink? Because it's not as easy like with a pencil. You don't have as much gradation and I've never drawn before. So I'm always on this like, how do you do this? I don't know. And that was a really fun beginning of discovering how you show a liquid in against, this hard object. And then the next piece I saw is the body that it's melting into. The butt was this perfect line that was there. And I loved that there was a booty in it. And then I saw a whole like torso and then the legs. And so I drew that piece in. And then the honey was going off of it into the circle. And I thought this bee would just pop out and be really beautiful in there. And then I discovered that this was a really erotic piece. And I had been dating somebody at the time that was really inspirational in this piece. And it felt like this kind of cross between the drippiness of masturbation and the drippiness of being with a lover. And honey just perfectly fit with that like sticky love. And I saw the mouth like perfectly in this little corner here. And I drew that and I thought, oh my gosh, there's a hand up here and honey is dripping off of that hand into the mouth. So I drew out the hand and wanted that like string of honey to come between the finger and the thumb, which was extremely suggestive, and I loved it so much. And then I saw the other body, and it was like, this is perfect. It's a, this like lounging back. And I love playing with perspective. Like, we do know this hand probably belongs to that body, and it's connected with this random line, and that makes no sense, but we know that. And I've discovered how to make that happen. I love playing with perception or the size of things, and how they relate to each other. Like the bee is obviously way too big. The mouth is way too small. And I I think it builds a bigger story when I bring things bigger and smaller. And then to finish it off, I felt like it needed texture added to it, which I don't generally do, like this background feeling. And I thought honeycomb would just perfectly bring like texture and a depth to it that would elevate this piece. And for me, it also had this 70s kind of feel to it with the colors and everything. And I thought that was the perfect time for, this like dip into love and, eroticism and like freedom of sexuality and things like that. So that is this piece. And it was the moment that I realized, I can make this art. I can make art that is really pushing a boundary. But when you see it, you're not going to think this is art that you need to hide away. I mean, some people do. Some people are like, where do you even put this? And I'm like, in your living room, so everyone knows how fucking happy you are.
Right?
And that you're getting your needs met. That's where you put it. But I know not everybody's like that. So
it's a great conversation starter.
Yeah. It's clearly
and I would put that not only for what you just discussed, but also like just to see people's reactions when they walk through the house, like to see if they would stop, to see if they would or just kind of glance at it, and come back to it. It's interesting to see how people perceive sexuality, especially in this country, in America, because it's very, even though everybody loves sex, nobody wants to talk about it. It's kind of taboo, even in this day and age, to a certain extent. We've definitely broadened our horizons a bit, but still, it's still not something that everybody is comfortable talking about.
Right. And my work now is, so I don't know how else to say this. Like, I love bringing that into my work. I love drawing sex. I love drawing eroticism and connection and intimacy. And so it is, some of the newer pieces, one of the pieces up at my show is, I don't know if I showed a big me with it, but like that one goes into even deeper of this body going into the ground and on its hands and knees. And I love drawing out the like sex in my work. It is not necessarily suggestive. It is literally what I'm drawing into my work. And watching people experience it is so fascinating. My favorite responses are when people look at me and they are clearly deeply judging me. I love that response when they're just like disgusted with me that I would draw this, which I think is funny because they're beautiful drawings. They are not explicit, like top right off the bat. You don't, and even I think the way that I draw and how I put flora and fauna within it, they don't come across as explicit, I mean, some of them, I guess there's one in there that has some kink in it, but they're really beautiful. They're not just dirty art or, and which dirty art belongs in this world too, but they're really a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, I think so. I think we live in interesting times too, because I think we're more open, but at the same time, I think people are far more judgmental about in a negative way. I mean, especially like if man was drawing that, they'd get a lot more ridicule than in the case of you drawing it. And I picked up a Joey Curlin, and it's amazing. And I do have it in my house, and it's this girl, beautiful girl. And it's a drawing, and it's a collage. And it's amazing how many people look at that and say that's exploitation. And it's like, you don't even see nothing. Like there's no nipple, there's a breast, but there's words covering. And it's just like, why are people getting so worked up? And then there's the whole conversation of men exploiting women in nudity, with whether it's photography or in art. And I'm just like, where the hell are we? You mentioned the 70s. Hell, in the 70s, nobody cared. It was just, you could do your thing. And now it seems like people are really getting, even though we're more open-minded about, gender fluidity and that, I see a whole segment that's getting even more, I'm not even going to say conservative, just whatever the word is, I don't know if you experience it since you're an artist selling it. Yeah, uptight.
I do have my own experience being a woman artist. I mean, I don't have as many opportunities as a man. If a man artist was my age making this kind of art, he would have more opportunities than me. We know that, right? We know the inequity of being a woman artist. Yeah, it's better, but I still don't have 50% of the space that men do, and I like the question of, are we using women in art exploitively, where, no, I don't think we are, but we can balance it out by allowing women to take up that space too, like women's bodies in it. But I will say, even to that, the women's bodies that I draw are also, I lean more towards what we're going to see on our own bodies. Not in art. I think women's bodies are misused in the way that it follows within the beauty standard, which is not something I want to perpetuate. Sometimes I have beauty standard bodies because those bodies are beautiful bodies, but to bring them into art all the time, if that's the only body we're even showing in art, we're not making the right kind of art then, And I think, though, having sexuality and sex in art is wonderful, and it's an expression, it's a wild expression, and having us, this like cleansing our art of that experience, of that human experience, is a disservice to ourselves and furthering us from the reality of what sex can be in our lives and in our humanity. And it's sterilizing it. And for me as an artist, I don't like, sex is art. Art is sex for me. Right. I'm making this, like, it's an incredibly intimate, like fulfilling, dopamine hitting experience for me to make art. And then when I started bringing this subject really into it, it was like, this is awesome. And the responses that I get are the responses I have to the art, and bringing that through, Yeah. And I also enjoy putting male bodies in. I don't as often, and I am working to bring that in. I do have a big piece that I did that is, there's no like feminine bodies in it, but I think that making art that's pushing these cultural boundaries is what I do. Like, my existence pushes cultural boundaries of just being a woman, queer, an artist. I don't do life normally. I function very differently. And that is my existence, is in constant, chafing against society. So, which is great. I love that. And I love making art that does that. I love watching. I think it's a great response when people are disgusted by something that I make. I'm like, I'm hitting the nail on the head. If you're disgusted, that means it's hitting right. And then people who are like, I need this in my life. That's when you're hitting it right, and you're hitting a subject or a feeling. And I want to continue doing that, and it has opened up. The illustrations have changed significantly in how I express myself fully in them. Right. And the people, my relationships enter into my work. They all have a story. I don't go into the piece with a specific anything in mind. It shows up as I'm making the piece, which is really fun for me, I have an overreaching theme that I like bodies, flora, and fauna. So when I'm looking at these and finding the material or finding the images, those images are definitely like in my mind, but I don't go in thinking like the big piece Falling Out of Rage. I wasn't like, I'm going to draw a cicada today. It just, a cicada was in there. And, and that's how they become these whole stories. And then I start discovering myself through them, which is really.
The last piece we looked at, I really love the surrealness of it all. It's very surreal. And I love that,
Yeah, I think that was Falling Out of Rage softly. Yeah.
You have on your website here on the front page, it says art with meaning, exploring sexuality and identity, which we've discussed. Join me in exploring vulnerability, erotic expression, and identities, which simultaneously celebrate and chafe against modern feminism. Speak a little bit to that last part, if you would.
Yeah, this one gets a little more personal, I guess, but I don't mean that in an overreaching way, because I think we all have our own relationship with feminism and the definition that fits for us. But I know for me, it is an active revolution to take up my enjoyment of exploring eroticism and to call it my own and to be out about it, to be so forward that I am a sexual person and I make art about it. I think that definitely goes against what we expect women to be creating things that are, just so out there when we're supposed to be, we're here to make babies. We're here to be in service to our families. We're not these animals. And that's what my art has become for me, is a way to step out and say, like, actually, I'm not. This is really important to me. And I seek it, in my life. It's something that is a big part of it. And I express it in my art. And I think that goes against what we want still of women. And I think sometimes I've run into in my life that feminism, I always felt like a bad feminist because I liked having eroticism in my life. And I don't speak overreaching to feminism. I speak to what I was raised with, what my filters of what it meant to be a feminist. And my art is grappling with that. I get a lot of people who are like, oh, of course your art. People love it. Sex sells, like that's their explanation of my work. And I'm like, well, that's bullshit. Like, no, it's not because sex sells. It's because I'm just talking about maybe it does, but it's still beautiful art. And why don't I get to do that? Like Wes was saying, some of the art, that we talk about men sexualizing women. And it's like, no, I don't think they necessarily, I'm sure some of them are because patriarch, all that bullshit. But I don't get to have that say necessarily. For me, it's, oh, sex sells. I'm not being looked at as an accomplished artist who has a way with expressing that in my work. And I think that fights against, expectations of women in art and whether they make pretty things or, palatable things or what your grandmother would want to hang. And I'm going against it and saying, actually, I make this because it's important to me. And maybe that makes me a bad feminist. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if you're a bad feminist. I don't know. Who knows?
You're human, first and foremost, and
well,
you deserve to have whatever connection or whatever emotion that you see or want to express. You should have that option. You should be able to express yourself in however way you see fit. So, we're talking about art here. There's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's
that's
bullshit when people put parameters around it,
Yeah. And I will say, I don't get those a lot. Those are far fewer that I have those experiences, but I know it is a revolutionary thing for me to be an artist, period. It's a revolutionary thing for me to be a creative human in our society today. We're expected to go into the machine and like do that until, I don't know, maybe we retire. And I'm over here like spending my time in my studio fucking around and drinking coffee and having experiences so that I can go back and make cool art. Like that's a really revolutionary thing to do. And then to put it in my art, like my body is in my art. I'm exposing myself, which I think is, really radical in my age, from how I grew up and from what, the art that I've seen. It's like, yeah, this is a really radical move to be so just out and like an open book, and to then bring it into my art. I have people who saw my show and they're like, oh, I see that they're in there and they're in there and there you are. And, and it was like, yeah, this is my life. Like I'm very much putting it out there. But I think that's why then the pieces become so powerful.
Absolutely.
I'm not hiding anything. And not that you should be so exposed all the time, but it really is fitting for me.
It's fantastic and it resonates with people because it's honest. And we talk about this all the time on this podcast. It's honest work. And you're pushing the envelope in some ways for some people. And again, it's being bold. And we've talked about this many times on the podcast, what it means to be bold. And I think you're incredibly bold for exploring this and taking it where you have.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels really powerful to be making the work now, and who knows how it'll evolve. I feel like I see it evolve every day. For these illustrations, I still make storyboards. I still illustrate them, and I write really personal stuff on them, and like go through my own experience of continuing to make the bold work and discovering new things about my art making and what I'm capable of and what I want to make. And it evolves every day.
This is another piece I really, really love. In My Dreams. I love your use, and I'm glad you talked about, how you start these pieces, but the color that you bring into this, and then, how it evolves from there. This piece is sold. You can find it on Raven's website in our portfolio section at the very top. Talk a little bit about this, if you would.
Yeah, and I will clarify one thing. The color goes on first. Some people are always surprised that I didn't put it on last. That's the first thing that hits the paper, and then I ignore it and I scribble, then I draw the drawings. And then actually after the fact, like this piece, the red circle is circling his head, and I'm sure subconsciously I'm interacting with it, but it doesn't play a big part in how I make them. And they always turn out like so beautiful. They interact with each other just in a really natural way, which is beautiful. This piece was a hard one piece. This took me a while to get to, and it sat for quite a while. I drew in the head. The head was the first piece that I saw, and I drew it in, and then I got stuck. And I didn't know what to do because the lines in it were really challenging. I did a lot of scribble on this piece, and I didn't know how to fill it in, but I knew it was really calling to be bodies. And it was made last summer, I think. And I was starting to really take hold of, no, I'm going to draw this stuff. I'm going to draw in, the intimacy and things like that. But I hadn't quite figured out how to do it. And so it sat aside for a little while. And then I saw the one where we're looking in the body in the top right, where we're kind of looking overhead. I saw that. And then the person laying down, their body came into view. But I realized the perspective and just how I drew it. This is like not really how you can look at it and see that where does the hip go or those types of things. And I decided to like experiment with that. What happens if I really blow it up and take away reality, but put just enough of it in that your brain will take the information in and see it and not start questioning, well, this isn't drawn right. Because I grapple with that a lot. I hate photorealism, me to draw it. And how do I make it look just right enough that it won't be distracting by how I've manipulated the body, but I'm forced to manipulate them because of the lines that that I have to work with. So then the next body came, the one on the left, and this is about a male orgy and voyeurism, which is the person watching, which some people have said they thought it was me, but it's not. This was really a focus on male space and male energy, and about, just like decadence and going into a sexual experience like that. So I loved how the bodies were layered. The voyeurism came in at the end. I had this really weird shape down here, and I was like, what is it? And then I saw the bridge of the nose is where one of the part of the line is. And I was like, that's it. There is a nose here, and we're talking about watching. And so it's a very sexual piece for me and something that I think is really like a wonderful experience, but very taboo when talked about in, public spaces. And that one sold, this was at the show that you came to in January. This one was there, and it sold with 2 others.
So a couple of comments on this one, which is really interesting. When I look at this, it looks like everything is on purpose. Like this whole randomness of the sketch at the beginning, just the use of the colors, you lay those down first. Everything seems very intentional. And I like the fact that it's all these pieces fit perfectly together, even though it's, like you said, proportion's not there, but the surrealness of it gives it a sense of that this all works. It works really well, even though like proportions and feet look weird because they're where they're placed. I think it works.
Oh, I was going to say it. Thank you. I have discovered that in making them. I don't mean to sound, I don't know. I always feel awkward saying this, but I have no idea why it keeps working out this way. I guess I've thought I have a knack for creating balance and also pushing like balance, because I have one of my most recent pieces I finished. I throw the balance off completely, but I find a way back to it. And it is intuitive. Like it is just how it's off of a feeling that I am able to pull pieces in. Because I saw a bunch of other stuff in this. These don't just come to me one piece at a time. I can't remember other things that I saw in this piece, but I will make choices to not draw something. And I'll think, no, that's just not quite it. And that's where I have to then unsee that, which is really hard, and then see this new aspect of it. And, but it has a lot of feeling of, is this feeling balanced to me? And how are these singing together? It feels like a musical experience with how they play together, but I still can't quite put my finger on it, why I have that innate understanding of how to bring them together like that. And the circles have no plan. I'm like, oh, you know what colors I'm feeling right now? I'm going to put those together. And then a lot of times I'll paint them with my non-dominant hand so that they get an organic feeling. And then I move on, and they end up working together in this way that is really pleasing. And it feels like magic to me, just pure magical how this works out. On my Instagram, there might be a picture of this piece. A lot of times I will show the initial scribbles of pieces. I started that habit because people started getting interested in it, like thinking, whoa, how do you, like, that's crazy that you go from this to this, chaos to this, accidental art or whatever. It is kind of cool to see how they start out and what I found in them.
Absolutely. So brilliant. So brilliant. I can't say enough.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's out of this world. And I've actually seen that piece in its new home not too long ago.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you know them. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm so glad. They bought all 3 of the pieces. The collector took all 3 from the show, which was really powerful to have them all go to the same spot.
I agree. And I was a little mad at him, just so you know.
You're mad at everybody, Todd. When they buy something that you didn't buy.
When I got to experience that show and Brian beat me to the punch for sure. I was just like, how brilliant that they bought all 3 of those pieces and they're kept together. And then to see it later on. And I actually was very confused. I thought somebody else had bought those that I know. And here it was, I went to a office space and it sits in the waiting room. And I was like, oh, this is who bought these. And I was like, well, I'm glad they are here because they will be very much enjoyed by a lot of different people.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah. And I can totally see them buying it. It fits within his aesthetic, at his office and everything. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now I had this show and I got to see so many pieces in a big space. And I play, the one last thing I'll say about that is I still play with sizes that I'll go from a 2-inch to 3-inch now I've gone up to 30-inch by 22-inch, and I'm about to get a 4-foot by 4-foot paper. And I'm curious how my illustration will go on. I want to make a big old piece and really stack it full of information and or images and see how that goes. But I still really enjoy drawing really small pieces and then going to big, impactful pieces. But even the small pieces will demand somebody's attention and pull them in.
Absolutely. There's an intimacy to, going small, right? It really makes you stop and forces you to see what's really going on there when it's a smaller piece.
Yeah. And I can draw pretty small. And that is something I like. I like creating intimacy when people are viewing the art even. And I will do that through detail. So some of my bigger pieces, you might be able to take in information from it, but you're going to see there's more detail, which will for someone who's interested, but it will demand that the person get closer because they're going to have to figure out what that is they're seeing by getting closer. So it creates this space of coming close. And I really like playing with that, how people interact with the art, that it's not just something you stand and look at. People are always getting really close and they're always nearly touching the glass, oh, look at this and look at this. And they start really getting, having conversation with whoever they're with or getting really close to it. And I think that's just yes, I'm making this intimate art and here people are being called into it, which is really sweet.
When I came to see the most recent show that you have up, which unfortunately will have passed once this airs, I found myself doing that multiple times as I went back to certain pieces, viewing at different distances, and then, inevitably finding myself up close and personal each time.
Yeah, I love that. It's so fun to watch. It's like the biggest gift for an artist to watch people or look at your art and how they interact with it. And it's so incredible to watch people do that, come into your art and see it. It reminds you that you're not crazy. Like, you are crazy. At least I think I'm crazy. Being an artist, I am definitely crazy. And I'm like, okay, it's good crazy though, because people are enjoying it. It has a greater good.
Absolutely. And I was sure to wipe off my nose smudges after I got, done with some of those pieces at Bitfactory.
Oh yeah, I have a cloth after every show because there's fingerprints all over the glass.
Really? Really?
Yeah.
I'm just joking about putting my nose that close, but
I believe it. I'm sure somebody has. Yeah,
I'm sure somebody has too.
Because the way that I frame my art is also extremely intentional, and it does trick your mind a little bit. People get tricked by the way I frame.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because, so many times I've seen a frame kind of make or break a piece. And I will say this, your taste in framing is, right on the money. Like, it never detracts and it always adds, I would say, to the piece. So what's the thought behind the way you frame pieces? You have
I didn't frame the illustrations when I started them. I sold them for pennies and then would just send them out flat. And then, what was that one? The bird one, the weeping bird. When that one came around, that's when I was like, oh, I have to frame these. These are actual pieces of art and must be framed. And I just saw it in my head. I was like, they need to float. I love shadow boxes. I have made people shadow boxes of memories throughout my life, like little things that I've collected and pictures, and I will shadow box it. And I thought that is perfect. So the piece needs to be in a black mat inside the frame and have about at least an inch if I can. Or no, it's always an inch. When my framer frames my tiny pieces, I know I challenge them and they're always like, anything for you, Raven, but no one else. And I think I know, I'm sorry. But I have at least an inch. I don't like to go too far, especially the small pieces. I don't want to go far beyond an inch and a half, but it floats within a black matted frame. And then just off the mat though. And then there's more space between the glass and the piece, and just like a shadow box. And I picked the frame color because, one, I can't present these without framing them, and framing is extremely expensive. And the thought of someone and I professionally frame them because I think they are professional pieces of work, and that's a part of my budgeting that is a requirement to showcase my work, because it shows it demands to be shown in a professional frame. And so I was like, how can I convince people to not strip the frame away and throw it away and just keep it, so that I know I'm not spending this money on someone's going to strip it away to fit in their home. So I went with this color palette of the frame for that, but then it works with any color that I do it with. And sometimes the colors in the work will warm it up. Sometimes it'll cool it down, but it's just this really neutral frame that works with any color, looks stunning with black. And then of course I do black ink, which is why I went with a black matte, because the lines sometimes that I work with are so fine. It really saturates the lines when you see it with that black matte, and pushes those lines out to the viewer more. So that's how I came about. It was all vision. I just saw how I was going to frame them, and then I standardized it because my subjects can change, my colors can change. So when they're shown together, it helps tie them all together, even though they could have nothing to do with each other. So there you go.
Very, very nicely done. Elegant, timeless. And like you said, it can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. If somebody wanted to do away with that frame, I would take issue with that.
I can't imagine this being matted around it and flat to the glass. They just wouldn't look like themselves that way. I can't imagine doing that, framing them within a mat. It would be weird.
It wouldn't have the same vibe at all.
I agree.
We mentioned that you're part of the show currently up at Bitfactory, the 4th annual US showcase. How has that gone? How has that been received?
It's been received really well. People have loved the work and said it was a stellar show. I think Bill at Bitfactory hung my friend Christopher LaFleur's in it and me. It's a 2-artist show, and the way that he presented us, we're in 2 different spaces of the gallery, and I think it highlighted both of us, and people have said it's been a really impactful show, really well done, and they have really appreciated the art. And when I've been in there and had an opportunity to talk to folks coming in to look at it, they've been so complimentary. Again, like, makes me feel like, okay, I'm doing the right thing, because they tell me how impactful it is for them when they see my work. And for me, seeing it hung in a gallery like that, properly lit, because I hang it in my gallery to preserve the frames, or in my studio, but it's not properly lit. I have my little studio that's just like my workspace. It's dirty and all of that. And so seeing them in this professional space, I think elevates it, and people have said just as much. I went to the first Friday last night, if people wanted to talk, and the room was just so full the whole night. And I was in the center of it at one point, just looking at all the people looking at my art. And I was like, oh my gosh, I started 8 years ago, and I thought, I want to live like this. I want to be an artist. This is my calling. This is how I can maintain being a healthy person. I can manage my mental health. I can express myself. I can feel normal in this world. I can get my energy out. And then to see it hanging in a gallery with all those people was just like, it made me cry. It felt like, spending I take days off. I think it's important, but like 5 days a week that I'm drawing, and then 7 days, 24 hours, an artist is thinking about art. But doing all of that to come to a moment to have a show like that was really great. And to hear people say how phenomenal it was, it gave me hope to just like keep making and keep shooting high for finding spaces for it. Because I'm not a emerging artist in my creation, but moving here, nobody knows of me. I have, I'm hustling. I'm very much hustling in my career to get my name out there and to get it seen by people.
Well, I can only say that you're on your way up. So
thanks.
I just want to say I'm glad that, because in previous years with that show, Bill's had, a bunch of different artists showed in that space. I'm really glad that he just chose 2 artists to be part of that this year. I think it worked out really nicely for both of you, Christopher and yourself. And it was really nice to see like a bunch of work from the same artists in that space, especially yours. And I enjoyed Christopher's as well, but it was really nice because I'd already become a fan to see you have that whole space in the back there. That was just phenomenal. How do you go about selling your art outside of shows like this? Do you have gallery representation with other galleries around the state, or?
No, I do not have gallery representation. I have actually never had gallery representation. Well, no, I did once in Crested Butte, but I was making different work and it was a new gallery. And the relationship we just didn't work out, but I don't have any. I sell on my website. I sell through, I do get into shows. I have shown in a number of galleries. I would love to find gallery representation where I can add that to my repertoire of how I show. I think it's important to have to diversify your business and diversify how you sell your art. But so I sell through my website. I sell through having shows that I get accepted to. Lately, I've been getting invited, which has been like such a wonderful feeling that I have not asked to be in shows, but shows are asking for me. And which was like, okay, things are working. And I do have an agent that found me and invited and wanted to work with me. And they help me do some of the other parts of like diversifying my business. I'd love to. I've done some artist talks and I really enjoy doing those, and I'll sell after talking to people. Like I sell if I'm present. I think people love hearing from an artist, and a lot of people buy art based on the artist. So I try to get myself with my art as much as I can. At my studio, we do open studios twice a year. I sell there, and I sell through Hearsay, those types of things. I don't know who needs to hear this, but I think it's super powerful that no matter who buys your art is important. And most of my art until last year was bought by my friends and family. I have afforded this business for 8 years off of friends and family, which is extremely beautiful and not at all discounting whether you're professional enough or good enough. Your family's buying it because it matters to them. And that was a huge part of why my business has taken off the way that it did, because I had loved ones who supported me. And I count those as collectors just as much as somebody walking into a gallery. Those are important people for an artist's career. So, yeah, it's kind of hodgepodgey how I sell it right now.
Talk about where you currently have your studio at.
My studio is at Prism Workspaces in Denver, Colorado, and it's a big, it's an old industrial building with 60-ish, 55, 60, 70. We never know how many of us there are artists, and we each have our own studios. Some people share studios. I don't. I have my own studio. And we're just in this big building making art. It's a bunch of professionals, hobbyists, interior designers. It's mostly creative artist people, but there are there's a bike shop, and it's an amazing space. I've met some great people there that we rely on each other to talk about art, talk about being creative and process and things like that. So I'm up in a little tiny studio, and it's super hot and full of junk and creative stuff, and has no ceiling. We have no ceiling, so we get to hear each other, which is pretty cool. Hear each other talk and cuss when we mess up and things like that. But and I actually, for any listeners that are local, you can go to my website and email me, and I give to it's a closed building, but I am always open to showing people my space and talking about my process if you're interested in that, or if you want to see the work in person. And it's on my website. You can come visit me and have a look for yourself. And I'll talk about my process and let you look around the studio if that's of interest.
How do you go about pricing your art? This is a question we ask almost everybody on the podcast.
Yeah, this is a great question. I started out by pricing it with just using a tool of width times height times the percentage of what I would think that would be based on how much materials I use. The cost of my business plays a big part of my pricing. But I think I know every artist price way too low. So I recently, over the last year, have had a number of people come in. I had a starting point and it wasn't feeling right. I don't want to say this because for collectors, you don't want to think that like pricing art is arbitrary. We don't really have a great way of valuing artists and art, I think. And so I start out with this base price, and now I kind of understand what I see in the world. I base off of other people, or I'll see an artist price extremely low and I'll think, oh, wow, that's shockingly low. So apply that to my art. And now I have an agent that helps like did some research for me and said, for your style, for where you're at, the fact that you own a small business, your prices are so low and you need to raise them. I've had that conversation before. And now I get a feel for knowing how much I put into running a small business and how much time it takes me to make the art. I have a general feel of my time. I do this for a full-time job. And so I do not expect my art, my original art, to support my life. I think that's way too much pressure on an artist's creativity and for how long it takes to make something. And that's where I try to diversify as well. So being hired for artist talks, or like I work for my dad sometimes where I'll help him do, those types. It's always within a creative realm. So I price it based off of like how much time it's taking, how much it costs to keep my lights on and things like that. And like looking at the market and seeing what others are pricing it at.
And everything you do is original, right? No prints?
I don't do originals. So I just hired somebody that they document my work. And it's my partner. I've hired them on to help me with documentation and run some of the back end stuff so that I can be making more of the art and getting out in front of the public more. And they are very interested in me doing prints. So I guess this is my long-winded way of saying I will probably be getting into prints coming up. I tried them in the past, but I have a lot of people ask me if I do prints, and I collect art myself, but sometimes I can only afford a print and I love their art. And I think making art accessible is really important. And I also think there's the wrong idea of I also make stickers that are like little pockets of my illustration. So I start at stickers. I think it's really great to make art accessible to every level. And also just as an artist, I know if you get them in at a sticker, you got like 1,000 people buy stickers, 100 people buy stickers. One of them will buy an original. And so that's like bringing them in at a lower level. One, it's accessible to people who can afford $5 or a $100 print or whatever. And they can work up the rung towards your original art. So it plays 2 points in giving everybody access to your art, and also, getting people in lower and moving up higher. So the prints are coming in soon. I'll be making them.
How much of a factor is social media in the sales of art?
It has not been like a huge factor. I actually sell my kink pieces through social media, which has been funny. Those don't rarely make it anywhere out of that because I share everything on my social media that I make. But the only ones I've seen really strongly sell are the ones that have a little bit of kinkiness to them. Those I'll sell off of. I'll get a message. How much is this? Otherwise, I don't sell a lot off of social media, and I don't concentrate a lot on it. I do share my process on my social media and things like that, but it isn't a huge part of my business because it's hard to exist on there. The algorithms, we all know, it's become a capitalist space, and I'm like, it doesn't work for me. I don't have the time to put into it. And I think to make money off of it, you have to put money into it. And I'd rather put that into somewhere else.
What is your regular routine like? Are you working? You said you work at least 5 days a week, correct?
Yeah. So I have a family and I really want to be present. Like when I grew up, it was just studio time all the time, which was great for me. But I want to be home and help with my kiddo. Not help with, but like be present in my kiddo's life and unpack the day and things like that. So I go in, wake up and get the family going. And then I head to the studio around between 9 and 11. I wake up early only because I have a child. If I didn't have a child, I'd probably get to the studio around 1. I'm a night owl for sure. And I would be Yeah, that's what I would be doing. We're talking about what I do. So I get in around 9 and 11, and I take some time to answer emails and get through like that kind of stuff. And then I pop in my headphones and start making. I really hit like the sweet spot of my creativity is around 1. It's like 1 to 3 o'clock. I'll start getting heavy into it. So sometimes I'll work late so that I can really ride that out. And then I head home around 5 o'clock and go in the next day. So it's Monday through Friday that I try to hold. That way on the weekends, I'm with my family. And then, if I have a show, then I got to be there that night or those sorts of things. I do work at home as well. So my making digital designs, I draw some of the pieces out of my illustrations I love merchandise. I know not everybody does, but so at home, I'll do I'll make my merchandise at home. I'll work a little bit there. By Sunday evening, though, I am just not knowing how to function anymore because I haven't made art for a while, 2 days, and I get really squirrely, and it's time to go back in the studio and making again. So, but I do not work 40 hours a week. Artists need lots of time to do nothing. So my day involves doing nothing sometimes. Cups of coffee. I meet friends for cups of coffee and, talk about life and things like that, which gives me energy to get back and make my art and those types of things. And leading up to shows and stuff like that, I definitely don't make as much art because I got to do the business side of life. But that's also why I hired my partner, because I could off-put some of that stuff so I can keep turning out the work.
Sounds like you're always thinking artistically. Do you ever run up against any kind of, creative blocks? Does that ever happen to you? And if so, what do you do when you do?
It's been a long time since I've run into a creative block. I think because of how my illustrations are made, it's hard to hit a creative block when you're trusting that your brain will complete things, right? Like in lines, our brains are always trying to make sense out of something. So it's really hard to hit a creative block that way. And I always, to help me through inspiration block, I have, and I think those are different because I can keep drawing even if I'm not feeling inspired. But I think having this general looking for bodies, flora and fauna, I don't have to come up with anything. I just know I'm looking for bodies, flora and fauna, and then I can find that. But it's really am I good enough? Like I'll finish a big piece and that's when I'll hit the point of, am I all washed up? Is this the last great piece I'll ever make? Oh my God, this was so phenomenal. How could I ever do this again? That's the block that I hit. And to do that, I always leave undone work or pieces in process. I always have pieces in process so that I can keep flowing that energy into it. And again, like having coffee breaks, reading, and those types of things are really inspirational to me. And listening to music, I listen to a lot of music, and that helps me like recuperate from putting out so much creativity so that I don't burn out as much. And then it's actually, at first I thought it was so challenging as an artist to be having to do the business side of things, but I try to save it up as much as I can, and then I'll do a week of it, and then I get so agitated that I haven't made art that that energy's there. I'm ready to make art. So it's kind of good that you have this I got to take care of business and pay my taxes and write these emails and all that, apply to these and that, and then not make art, because then I just get like really this energy, so I can put that back into the art that's waiting for me on my wall.
What kind of music are we listening to when we're creating in the studio?
I make a playlist every year of songs that I'll just have Spotify playing, which sometimes annoys me because they have an annoying algorithm, but my friends and the people I date, the people I love, they'll send me a song and I'll play the radio off of that. And so I kind of go through this. And then when a song hits, and if I'm drawing and I'm like, if I like scoot back in my chair and I'm like feeling the song, and you get that like your skin prickles. And at that moment, I'm like, God, this life is so fucking cool. I'll save that song and I put it on a playlist and I build it throughout the year. So when I'm ready to draw, I will start out with that playlist. And it is a very wide ranging, like, kind of music, from I love jazz to metal to folk to R&B, all of it. So it's wide ranging.
Commissions. You don't do those, or do you take on commissions?
No, I don't do them. I would like, I think I probably should figure out how to do that someday, but I hate the pressure so much on my creativity. It's really overwhelming to me and it'll just kill it. So at this point, I don't take on commissions, and especially the way that I make my illustrations, it would be very challenging to take on a commission. If I did, it would have to be really like full creative, that I have full creative license to it. Like I could take on the size of paper, maybe the colors you want, the circles, and maybe a theme. I did one with a theme and that worked out okay, but they are kind of hard to fit in with the kind of work that I make. Because if somebody was like, I want a poppy flower in it, like, yeah, maybe I could, but is that what's in this piece? I don't know. So I don't at this time.
Makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
For what you do, I don't think I would be incorporating that into my business model.
Yeah.
You talked about friends and family collecting your work. Are you starting to see a collector base building after doing a number of shows and being in this market for a while?
Yeah, I would say the last 2 years, I haven't sold to friends and family anymore. And all my sales have been to people I don't know and collectors. Yeah. And I've had some come back, who saw it here, bought it, got a hold of me and said, well, I saw these other pieces. I need these other pieces. So it has turned from friends and family, like, thank goodness, friends and family, you don't have to buy it anymore. But it, it has turned over to people I don't know. And that's wonderful. I have I'm sure I'll have some more come up, actually my friends and family. I don't know how much they like the like erotic-y art anymore. I haven't sold a lot of that to my friends and family. Maybe it's too weird for them. It goes to strangers.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah. So I've seen that shift, which is really nice. And like I mentioned before, the shift of I'm more often than not, I'm invited to spaces than I am asking to be in spaces, which is, I think, a really great thing to see.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
Are you a reader?
Yes.
What kind of books and magazines do you read?
I love nonfiction. I struggle to read fiction. And lately I've been reading a lot about my like spaces and queer identities and things like that. I'm just now finishing a book by Bell Hooks, All About Love, her most well-known book, which was fascinating. It was not what I was expecting. And I read, I have to make a recommendation to every person out there that loves artists, is an artist, loves creativity or anything. And it's The Ninth Street Women. You have to read that book. It's about the 5 women who really were the heart of the abstract expressionist movement in New York City in the 40s, 50s, 60s and on. Lee Krasner, Grace Hardigan, things like that. It is the most influential book I've read, and I loved it so much. I haven't read it for a few years, and I'm gearing up to read it again. So I love reading also about artists' biographies and autobiographies. It feels like in a world, I don't have a ton of artists. Well, now at Prism Workspaces, I have more, but there was a really long time where I just felt really crazy being the creative mind that I have that just never stops. And so I like reading about other creatives, because then you're like, oh, wow, okay. I'm just living in this. This is just, I don't have a lot of those people that I relate with. And reading about them is like seeing yourself. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, you find out you're not the only one that feels the same way or thinks the same way or reacts the same way. There's other people that are doing it too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really wonderful. But I love reading nonfiction. I like learning, and I love thinking, and I love having conversations about books and what you learn and things like that. So they're kind of fuel for, what you're going to talk about at coffee tomorrow.
Anything else you have coming up that you want to talk about or that you want to promote? Anything that we didn't touch on today?
Not that I have right now. Then next year I'm heading into preparing for my father-daughter show, but that is in a year, almost to this month. That's kind of what I'm heading into. I'll have I'm doing a market in Denver here, which I'll have on my website, and might have a fun little show, some of my women pieces in Denver at Core Gallery Space. But otherwise, I'm heading into preparing for a big show. And I do, for those who want to keep up with that, I do have a mailing list, and I email very infrequently, and it's always with information or a thank you after an event. But that's a great place to know what I'm up to. I share it on Instagram, but who knows if you see it sometimes. I'm always sharing those. And I try to keep a deep stock of work going. So shows will pop up between now and then. I'm sure I'll have more shows. I just don't know what they are yet.
Wes, you got anything else?
So, yeah. So my last question for the day will be, as a woman artist, what woman has inspired you? Like, who do you look up to?
Joan Semmel. She is making incredible feminine, like erotic art. She's in her 90s now, and she's still making it. And they're just so blatantly erotic. One of her most famous collections that she did was painting a woman from her own perspective of her body. And they're just stunning, of these different bodies and like what a woman looks down at instead of from the perspective of everyone viewing the woman. And then she has some pieces where you get the bottom view of like a man and woman fucking, and like of the penis going into the vulva, and they're oil paintings, and the color palettes are just like, there's like fields of color. They're not realism. They're so phenomenal. And she's 90 and she is still making this art. And I'm like, I'm going to be Joan Semmel. I want to be that. I want to live that long. And I want to keep making really, really good art like that. So
thanks for sharing. That's interesting. I'll have to look her up and check out her stuff. No, thank you. And this has been such a great afternoon. So thank you so much for sitting down with us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I was nervous, but not. I hope I was interesting enough.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay,
it really
good.
was.
Hopefully I didn't I felt like I monologued you a lot there, but you were asking me questions,
That's our job.
Thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. It was really great.
Thank you. I really appreciate you talking with us today and sharing all that you did, your journey as an artist. And man, just keep doing what you're doing. It's just so fantastic. And I'll tell you what, I don't know what our age difference is, but when you turn 80, if I'm still above ground, I want to make that portrait of you with that cigarette and the, glass of booze, bourbon, scotch, whatever it was in your hand, with a big piece of erotica in the background.
Yes, let's do it. That would be great. I'm almost 40, so what?
Oh yeah, I got you beat. So
she's just
we'll see.
Live long, Todd. Live long.
I will. I have longevity, at least on my dad's side of the family. So we'll see if we can make that happen.
Okay, that would be so awesome. Yeah,
we'll make a pact right now.
Okay, I got it.
When you turn 80, if I'm still above ground, I'll be somewhere in my 90s, probably pushing 100, we'll do it.
Okay. That sounds perfect. I'll be all wrinkly and my tattoos will be all like shriveled up. It'll be awesome.
And I'll have to shoot on a tripod, and I'll stand behind my walker, and I'll have my studio assistant push the shutter. I'll just direct.
That's great. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, both of you. That was fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Again, don't forget to follow Raven on Instagram at Raven Rohrig, and check out Raven's work at her website, ravenrohrig.com. You can find all this and more in this week's episode notes. For the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown. Have a great week.